Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Navigating Now. As always, I'm your boy, Des Cole, and as always, we have with me our co-host, Jay Bartlett. Today, we have a very special guest. I'm going to give him a chance to introduce himself, but his name is Eliot Goldstein. Eliot, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Of course. Sorry to cut you off, but if you could just start off by telling everybody just who you are, where you're based out of, and just a little bit about what you do.
Sure. I'm an attorney. Have a practice in Somerville, New Jersey, Goldstein Law Firm. We do trust and estate work, which is estate planning, estate administration, estate litigation. We do corporate work, business-related work, buying and selling businesses, practices, setting them up, dissolving them, contracting, and we do real estate, residential, commercial, industrial, buying, selling, refinancing, leasing, those three areas.
Awesome. Yeah, we're super excited. I mean, you do the whole gambit of things, so we're excited to get into all of those different topics. But before we do, I'd like to just start off with, if you could just tell us where you grew up and just the environment that shaped you in your younger years.
Sure. I'm a Bayonne boy, born in Jersey City, raised in Bayonne. Family moved out of Bayonne when I was going into my junior year in high school. We moved to Upper Saddle River, which was a little bit of a culture shock. Went to Johns Hopkins undergrad and Syracuse Law School. Environment-wise, father was a lawyer, mom was a home economics teacher, and I have one sister, and we had one dog.
Your father was a lawyer,
oldest or youngest?
Sister's younger. Sister's 2.5 years younger. She's a lawyer also, although she doesn't practice anymore.
But the law is in the whole family, yeah.
Facts.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm third generation. My grandfather was a lawyer too. My grandfather and father practiced in Hudson County. So I'm in Somerset County. Yeah.
So was that something that you were just kind of like assumed to be in, or is that just like you were always inspired to be one?
I was always inspired to be one. Actually, my father tried to convince both my sister and I not to be lawyers. He said, if you're going to work this hard, go into business and make money. But neither one of us. So maybe it's a defective gene. I don't know, but it's in the DNA for sure.
Not a bad trait to pass on.
Yeah. I have 3 daughters. My middle daughter's in law school now. So
Gotcha.
They'll be a 4th generation New Jersey lawyer.
So as far as, I mean, when did that like inspiration start? Was it like middle school, or like when you started really getting interested in like business
in colleges,
like
or when did you make the choice?
No, I think long before college, long before high school, probably. As long as I can remember, I wanted to be an attorney.
Wow.
I guess the attorneys know the rules of life, and you can't play the game unless you know the rules, type thing. So I always wanted to. I went to Hopkins, which is a pre-med factory, and my father told me to keep my options open, hoping that I would like science and go into medicine. But after organic chemistry, I realized science is not for me. I need to stay with the English and the reading and the writing.
Right. Yeah, my next question was going to be, that's why I asked that one, just other inspirations that you had as a kid, other than like your father. Did you have other inspirations as far as lawyers or maybe even other people?
Yeah, well, my grandfather too.
Mm-hmm.
Those two were the biggest, by far, biggest influences on my life, I think.
Okay. Yeah. But other than that, what was kind of your track? Obviously, you said that you went through, you tried chemistry and stuff for a while, so the sciences, but you finally found your way to law. I guess my question is, what was your relationship with information at the time? Were you like a really hardworking student? Did you always love studying, or was it a struggle to get through it?
It was a struggle getting through organic chemistry, but the English part, no. I've always been, I think, a good student. Um, Went to a reputable school, and then on to law school. In law school, I was on the law review, and I published an article when I was in law school. So yeah, no, school is always, other than again the sciences and the math, has always been
Right.
kind of easy for me.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So from there, could you just kind of just give us the sequencing of how you went from, you said you went to Johns Hopkins. From there, could you just give the story of how you got into your professional life?
Sure, sure. So after Hopkins, I worked for the U.S. Navy as a civil servant. I was in their cost analysis division in Crystal City, which is just outside the Pentagon, down
Oh,
in
okay.
near Washington. So I used to price missiles and aircraft. So it was pretty fun graduating college and then working in the hundreds of millions of dollars and rounding off
Right.
in the hundreds of millions of dollars. If the Navy bought 18 F-18s for the next 10 years, how much would it cost? And that was a lot of math regression, but there was computer models to help me, so I didn't have to do the math
Right.
myself. So I worked there for 2 years, and then knowing I always wanted to go back to law school or go to law school, after that I went to law school at Syracuse. After Syracuse, I took a job at a firm down in D.C. Aiken Gump, Strauss, Howard and Feld is the name. It was a DC, a Texas firm. They had a big office in DC, about 200 lawyers in DC and another 200 at the time lawyers in Texas. Vernon Jordan was one of the principal partners there, and Bob Strauss, who used to be a big behind the scenes power broker, was the other partner. There I was I was in the labor and employment department. So we represented at the time Eastern Airlines. Frank Lorenzo was battling with the unions at the time. I was there at Aiken Gump for 2 years. Realized it wasn't for me. Too much time in the library, not enough time interacting with people. So I left, went to a smaller firm also in DC that had about 40 lawyers. There I did commercial litigation. Unfortunately, that firm imploded, no fault of mine, about a year after I got there. Their largest client was a real estate developer. This is back in the early 90s. The real estate market was tanking. So he tried to subsidize his real estate practice by selling cocaine. The feds confiscated everything. He wasn't going to pay his multi-million-dollar payable. All the partners scurried, and the firm disappeared. From there, I went to a small 8-lawyer firm in Inner Harbor, Baltimore. And there I started doing estate planning, estate trust and estate work. I did real estate work. It was more of a general practice. And I was there, met my wife, or I should say re-met my wife. We went to everybody knew me. We lived 2 blocks from each other, never talked to me. Didn't want anything to do with me. I was the new nerd, and she was, cool and established. So it took us 10 years after we graduated for us to get together. So I guess I got the last laugh.
Of
She married
course.
the nerd. So, but then I had decided that I wanted to go off on my own. And we're both from Jersey, family in Jersey. So we moved back to Jersey, and then I opened up my own practice.
Wow. That's quite the journey you had there.
Yeah, been around a little bit. So I have actually 5 bars. I passed 4 and I waved into 1. But I only practice now in New York and New Jersey.
Oof,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's very impressive. Well, I
Thanks.
guess I on our show, it's obviously it's called Navigating Now. We like to give people, we bring people on in hopes that people can learn from other people's stories. Obviously we want people to carve their own paths, but what are just like kind of the main lessons that you took from your younger years in moving around and going all those different firms and realizing success and failures and all those things? What would you offer to other people as far as lessons that you learned?
Well, I would certainly start at a big firm if you're given the opportunity. It wasn't for me, but I'm glad I did it. It's sort of, I tell people, like the Army. It's a great place to start, but you don't have to stay there your whole career. You see how the big firms handle law, and big law firms practice a different kind of law than the smaller firms do. But it's a good starting point. So I'm glad I did that. I would certainly tell people to try different parts of the law, law school students or new lawyers, to see what fits best. You go to a law firm, litigation is usually the big pusher. People push you into litigation, but not everybody's cut out for litigation. Not everybody likes litigation. So you need to sample a bunch of different areas. Absolutely.
I guess a follow up to that as well. And I don't really hear this question as often, but what were like, obviously you had other people that you knew that were lawyers that I'm sure were trying to come up the same way as you. What were things that you saw, big mistakes that other people, as you were coming up, big failures that you saw other people make that you kind of thought in your mind, like, okay, don't do that. You know what I'm saying?
A little bit, I guess. The biggest failure I saw was, you start with a big law firm and they pay you handsomely. They work you like a dog, but they pay you handsomely. So you get what they call the golden handcuffs. It's tough to break away. And I had a couple of colleagues when I started out at the firm in Washington, that again weren't happy, but weren't willing or able to make the break, and either sold their souls for the mighty dollar, or were willing to give up their personal life to perfect their or develop their professional life. But I don't think they were happy. I know they're not happy, having talked to them. So that was, I think, the biggest one. Do what you do, what makes you happy. It makes life a lot easier.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All right. Well, I think that kind of concludes our like background
That's the
section.
background. Yeah,
Yeah.
so now I wanted to kind of get into like what everyone else uses the law for, and kind of shed some light on it, because you know what I mean, not everybody knows even the basics that they should be aware of. Like when we go to school, like for business, for example, we take one class called business law, and we talk about the basics, and I'm like, what are we, maybe 3 years removed? Ask people 5 things from that class, you know what I mean? Like no one knows anything. And so then when people go and start companies, it's a mess, it's chaos, and they don't know who they need to talk to, they don't know who they need to be on their team. Some of them hardly even know like the different types of lawyers that they'll need. So the first place I'm going to start with is, could you explain for people that don't know, why do people need lawyers?
Well, people, entrepreneurs need lawyers to make sure that when they buy something, they're getting what they're bargaining for. So a lawyer can protect your interests, make sure that you're getting what you think you're getting, make sure that the deal is structured that if you don't get what you're supposed to get, you have the legal recourse to pursue, and if there's a breach of contract, go to court and be able to collect because of the breach of contract. You know, people ask me when I do trust and estate work, I can go online and download a will form and plug in the information. Why do I need a lawyer? You know, if your life is cookie cutter, then maybe that works for you. But the problem is, you know, once you do it, after you die, it's too late to undo it. And if you made a mistake and it wasn't done correctly the first time, then you're out of luck. So lawyers make sure, or at least good lawyers, hopefully, make sure it gets done right the first time, so there's no problems when you need the documents. You know, I always use the example of O.J. Simpson. He didn't have to have a lawyer, but I'm sure he's happy that he did get a lawyer. You know, the only entity that needs a lawyer is a corporation in court. Otherwise, you can represent yourself, but I think, you know, you may be foolish doing so. But then again, I'm biased, so.
And so,
I mean, that's a great example.
No, that is a great example. That is a great example. So that's why people need lawyers. The next question is, why do people need contracts?
Well, I mean, contracts, there are different kinds of contracts. So when you say contracts, I don't know if you mean written contracts. You can have a verbal contract, you can have an implied contract. Whether you need a written out contract depends on what's involved. If you are, you know, you go to the barber and you sit in the chair, that's an implied contract. He's going to cut your hair or she's going to cut your hair and you're going to pay her. You don't need a written contract for that. Sometimes a simple confirmatory email is all you need, just to make sure that the terms of the agreement are set out in writing somewhere, so that down the road, if there's an issue, an honest misunderstanding, or, you know, a mistake, or a difference of opinion, and you have to go to court, at least then there's some objective piece of information that the judge can look at to determine what the intent of the parties were. Obviously, the more you have at stake, the more of a substantial, detailed contract you need. So, you know, you need, and in other areas, you need a contract. You need a written contract for the sale of real estate. You need a written contract under the law. The UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code, requires written contracts for the sale of goods. The consumer fraud laws require written contracts between contractors and homeowners and things like that. So there are certain times in the law that you absolutely need a contract. A lot of times I hear, I know this guy for 20 years, I trust him like he's my brother. You know, that's fine and dandy if everyone did what they were supposed to do and everyone understood what was going on, then there wouldn't be a need for lawyers. But unfortunately, not everybody does what they're supposed to do, and sometimes there's a difference of opinion as to what the agreement was in the first place. So you need a contract, a more formal written document.
Yeah. So basically, I think what our contracts needed is on a scale of how much is on the line.
The more that's on the line, the more detailed contract you need. Absolutely. You know, if you're going to do a small job, you don't need a full-blown 20, 30-page document. If you're buying a business, you know, then it's a different story. For, you know, buying something for hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, you want to make sure that the agreement is memorialized in specific detail. Absolutely.
One of the contract things that we just learned today, like on that topic, was we got paid in some shares. So we just like, long story. We got some shares from a startup, and we learned that we needed to send in an 83B so that we can realize whatever tax initially, so that down the line, if the company gets evaluated, then we don't have to end up paying or showing income or whatever of hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. And again, like little stuff like that, like we don't even, like we wouldn't know. And
Right,
again,
would
that's
never
like,
know.
that's why things like why having a lawyer is useful, and in the first place, that they can tell you that. But I guess the next question going into that is, what is a lawyer wholly responsible for? Because it goes beyond just actually writing the contract, like, or it maybe entails a little bit of consulting. Could you explain a little bit of what that is for you?
Absolutely. Part of the lawyer's job is to be a consultant, to at least raise issues with the client during the negotiations. You know, do you want this? Do you want that? Things that, as you say, the client may not know. You know, and then sometimes the client says, no, we don't need to go into that, or, you know, that's not necessary. But at least you educate the client as to what the possibilities are. Case in point, I have a commercial tenant who's in court. They had a lease. The lease didn't provide that if they had to sue the landlord for breach of contract and they went to court, they would get attorney's fees. So the contract, which was written by the landlord, said if the landlord goes to court and wins, he gets, or it gets, attorney's fees. Not so with the tenant. Now we're in court and they're spending much money on legal fees, and they're not going to be able to recoup them because the contract doesn't allow for it. So something like that, had they come to me to negotiate the lease, that would have been certainly a point that we would have made the attorney's fees reciprocal. So again, lawyers are educators, and they hopefully make sure that they get what the client gets, what they think they're getting.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really helpful just understanding the standard practice. It's just like the way things are done, like most people might not be aware of. And so then, like, there's a lot of different categories of law. Like you said, like you do estate, and there's also like business and everything else. Like, what are
Real estate.
like all the different categories of lawyers? I mean, I don't know if you could name all of them, but some
I
of the
can't
most
name them. We don't
important,
have enough.
some of the most important ones. Which ones are most common, and which ones do you think are most needed?
In this day and age, especially, even since I started practicing, the practice of law has become very specialized. You know,
Right.
like grandfather and father were general practitioners. They did everything. They did someone's divorce, they did their bankruptcy. If they had a criminal matter, they represented them there. If they were buying a house, they represented them in that matter. These days, lawyers have to really concentrate just on a couple of areas, but the big ones are litigators, obviously, lawyers who represent you in court. There's bankruptcy lawyers, there's criminal lawyers, there's matrimonial lawyers, there's trust and estate lawyers, real estate lawyers. The lawyer that most people come in contact with is really the real estate lawyer, because they buy a house and they want someone to represent them during that process. Or municipal court, you get a speeding ticket, you get a DUI, whatever the case, and you need a lawyer to represent you in traffic court. Those are the two areas that the public interacts with lawyers the most. But even within corporate lawyers, there's mergers and acquisition lawyers, there's bankruptcy lawyers, there's subdivisions within different areas, because again, the law is getting more complicated. Regulations, there's more regulations, and you really can't specialize in everything. You got to focus on a couple of areas.
Gotcha. It's actually quite interesting, because I was even thinking while you were talking about like even just how specialized everything's getting, and even like I mean, even thinking about like Web3 and like you could be somebody who only specializes in NFTs in
Like
like
crypto
disputes of
law.
NFT law. Exactly. Like, so, and like smart contract law, like smart contract lawyers and stuff like that. So
You
yeah,
know,
it's
intellectual property, there's
mhm,
trademarks, there's copyrights, and some lawyers do it all. Some just even focus just on the patent law. There you need a
right,
specialty. You have to have the scientific background, as opposed to copyright law and things like that. So, within the IP and now NFTs and the whole works, that's expanding, and that's becoming a specialty unto itself.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now your specialty, one of your specialties is real estate. And so I want to buy this. I want to buy this. I want to buy skyscrapers. I want to build some of these too, but like I want to buy this one. What are the first actionable steps, law wise?
Well, in the process, I guess the first step would be to have an engineer make sure that the structure is sound. Obviously, you don't want to buy something if it's structurally unsound or there's a lot of defects and it needs to be updated, whatever the case may be. But assuming the building that you are looking at is something that you can live with, either you need to modify, but you are within your budget, or it doesn't need modification, then that's fine. That's the first step. After that, you can get under contract, or and during that contract period, you would have a due diligence period. So, there's a lot of leasing going on. You want to be able to review the leases, find out if the tenants are current, what kind of leases the tenants have, what their leases, what the tenants are paying. So you get the rent rolls. And that's part of your due diligence. Uh, Assuming though that buying the building makes economic sense, because the rents are such, and the expenses, you estimate the expenses, or you can get the current owner's expense sheets. If it makes sense financially, then you move on. You can contract. You want to make sure that the sellers own the building. So you're going to do a title search, make sure there are no liens on the property, there are no judgments against the owners, there's no tax liens. Um, if there's mortgages, make sure that there's enough money in the sale to pay off the mortgages, so that when you get the property, you get it free and clear and you get clean title. So that would be the process in a nutshell for buying an existing building. You want to build a building, then you need to go and do land use work, and that is make sure that the area is zoned for whatever kind of structure you want to build. Make sure you understand what the restrictions are, the building construction code restrictions are for building, how high you can build it, how wide, what it has to be. Setbacks, make sure, and there you'd hire an architect and an engineer, obviously, to help you through that process to make sure that you can build on that site the structure that you're anticipating building. Then you need to make sure you have your financing in place with the banks to make sure that again, you can not only buy the land, but then have enough construction loan money to build whatever it is that you're going to build.
Great. So you just taught
All
us how
right,
to
facts.
buy and build skyscrapers in about 5 minutes.
Facts.
Telling it's the easy part, doing it's a little harder.
I got that. I
Right.
got you then. You know what I'm saying? We'll work together.
All right.
So the next question now is like actionable steps. How do we do property? The hot question, I think everybody kind of wanting to be entrepreneur. What are the first actionable steps for starting a company? Like if I'm literally at like idea stage, this is the name. What do I need to do legally to create my company?
Well, I mean, you can have a company as a sole proprietorship. So just by saying, I want to go into business, you're in business. You can set up an entity. There's corporations, there's limited liability companies. And in that case, you need to file with the state to set up, because the state creates either your corporation or a limited liability company. And then once you have the building, once you have the company set up, then you need to register with the Department of Taxation to do business in the state of New Jersey. So forming the entity and then registering the entity are the first two primary steps to setting up a business. If you have partners, then you want to make sure that you have either an operating agreement, if it's an LLC, setting out, what everyone's rights are, obligations are, in terms of management, in terms of profits and losses, whatever the case may be. And then probably, although it's more of a financial step than a legal step, you want to get a business plan. You want to have a plan that sets out what you do and where you see your company going, especially if you're going to get financing from a bank. The bank's going to insist on a business plan, so they have a sense of what you're thinking, where your business is. If it's a startup, what you're anticipating your business will be in 1, 3, 5, 10 years from now. So those are the basic steps to setting up an entity or a business with an entity.
Those are the first legal steps. Facts.
Right.
And then
Absolutely.
you call us because you need a mission statement, a website, a deck, you know what I'm saying? The first things that you need to show other people, we need to design the business card, you know what I mean? All of that. We need a logo. There's so many things, I think, where people want to just like jump into business and think like, oh, like I have an idea. But then like you say, all right, well, we need to have an operating agreement. We got to do this. We got to do that. We got to do that. And you can get it all set up in like a month. And you know what I mean? It's not hard if you know how. But like figuring out all those steps for some people, especially when everyone around them isn't an entrepreneur, it's kind of hard to come by the information sometimes.
Absolutely. And part of it is you should get a good accountant. So again, part of the business plan is a budget. So, you're going to want to figure out what your expenses are going to be, marketing expenses, if you need to rent space, what the rent is going to be, so that, again, especially if you're going to go for financing, you have it laid out as to, what you're going to have to pay out in terms of expenses and what you hope to gain in revenues.
And then kind of like a side question to that, like, how do you feel like kind of all of the, we just kind of call them professionals, work together or interact together, like with the company, the lawyer, as well as the accountant and like whoever else might be involved in that group? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it helps if all the professionals know each other and can work together, but the lawyer needs to be there, the accountant needs to be there, the banker needs to be there, the marketing people need to be there. Everyone's doing their own thing. All the pieces are coming together. And at least from the legal standpoint, the lawyer obviously takes the lead on that. If you're going for financing, the lawyer will review the loan documents, and the accountant can help with the business plan and setting up the taxes, doing the taxes and whatnot. So yeah, those are the three primary: the banker, the lawyer, and the accountant. And I'll add the fourth for you guys, the marketing guys.
Hey. What you selling? You know what I'm saying? How are they buying it? Yeah.
Exactly.
So
I guess I wanted to just kind of bring up kind of a topic I brought up before. I brought up like the Web3, how Web3 is just like a growing, kind of like what we're transitioning into now is basically what I want to say around it. So really, I'd just like to ask, like, how do you feel the law is changing or evolving in this time? And do you feel that Web3, as far as blockchain and cryptocurrency, will have an impact, and kind of what type of impact you think it will have?
Yeah, I am by no means a cryptocurrency expert. I'm not even sure I understand it. I read in the paper that Bitcoin just lost half its value
That
for
is
no
true.
apparent reason. Right now, I haven't seen a lot of cryptocurrency taking the lead. I don't see in deals people buying and selling, at least in my practice. I'm assuming it goes on, but I haven't seen it. I'm not familiar with that. In terms of the practice of law and where that's going, it's getting faster and faster. Again, I told you my prior generations were lawyers. My father said that the fax machine spoiled the practice of law, because now you could instantaneously send something to somebody. You didn't have to wait 3 days to get it delivered. I would say now that the cell phone and the internet is even speeding it up more, because even if you're out of the office, it used to be that all the fax came in, I wasn't in the office, but now you're out of the office, but you still have your cell phone, you're still connected to the office with the internet. So there's, it's instantaneous now. Clients expect you to be accessible, and they expect, response immediately. That just speeds up the practice of law. So it's not like, I guess, in the old days. So that's
Right.
that I see. In terms of the law itself, again, becoming more specialized, more detailed. There's more regulations, more statutes coming down. So it makes it again difficult to do everything. Getting back to what I said before about needing to specialize even more so.
Right. And I've even seen like the phenomenon of, like, even we now use kind of like half of our accounting system is an online service, and like a lot of people using AI and stuff like that, to technology, to do their books or replace institutions that were once people that would do the books or stuff for them. Are you seeing that as a challenge at all in the lawyer space?
Well, you see it more, I think, in the accounting space. You have people in India doing tax returns. The
Right.
accountant sends the information out. The law firms now are doing a lot of things remotely now after COVID. I've always been in the office. I have a small office. I like being here. I
It's a
like,
nice office
I
too,
leave.
man. I'll say it. It's a nice office. I
Yeah.
mean,
But I have friends who work at the bigger firms, and one guy just moved to Austin, so he's going to work remotely from Texas, even though he's a New Jersey lawyer. So that's changed it. In the courts, it's changed it dramatically. You used to have to go to court and sit and wait for your turn. Now they schedule you for a Zoom conference like this. From what I'm hearing from the surrogates and the judges, Zoom is here to stay uh, for uh, uh, for the indefinite future. Maybe for trials, we'll have in-person trials, but for motions and then day-to-day stuff, it's Zoom. I was talking to a
Wow.
judge in Cape May County, down South Jersey, and he said that now they have, because everything's remote, uh, they have more out of county lawyers than ever before. People from
Mhm.
Roseland now are taking cases down in Cape May because they know they don't have to travel down there to go to court. Everything
Right.
is virtual, so you can be anywhere. So that's changed, the practice of law. Now lawyers can practice anywhere in the state for the
Mhm.
most part, because again, there's no long commuting times. Um, so, I mean, that's certainly
Gotcha.
changed the scope of litigation, at least.
Yeah, that's huge. I think we see a trend in a lot of other industries as far as being able to now just be able to, even just with the internet, be able to sell to people in different places and be able to serve people in different places remotely.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the internet, not to cut you off, the internet has also changed the practice of law because now everyone thinks that they can do it because they
right,
go
because they can
online
Google it.
and they'll Google it and there it is, or you go to zoom.com or LegalZoom and you download the form and so now I can do it. Why do I need a lawyer? So yeah, the internet has certainly made people more savvy, but also give them a false sense of knowledge, I guess.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Speaking
I
of like,
wait. I have a
speaking
quick
of that,
question.
go
Wait, I
ahead,
have a
Jay.
quick question. We didn't write any of this down, but it just came to my mind. Cause like I remember one of the first times I talked to like a business lawyer, he put me on to force majeure. And this was before COVID, right? So my question kind of is real quick, like, did that just delete every contract like with COVID? Because it was because force majeure, I'm sure is like a clause in most contracts. Like if you have it done at a high level, like with
Tell
like
the
a
people
real
what it is, Jay.
legal professional. And Ellie can tell us what it
Yeah.
is.
So
Facts. Can we
so
just tell the people what force majeure is?
force majeure is if there's an act of God or an action beyond the control of one of the parties, that party doesn't have to bear any blame. So if you know in a business deal, if right now we have pipeline problems, so you know force majeure beyond the scope. If there's a war and you can't perform under the contract, you're excused from that. COVID certainly changed that, and there's COVID force majeure, COVID type provisions that you know that we inserted. Maybe less now. Hopefully now that we're coming out of it, but we'll see. But absolutely, you know, the real estate practice, we don't close now. We don't have a closing where both parties come together because of COVID. We used to the seller sends the documents in, except for, you know, major deals, but for the, you know, the common house closing, seller sends the documents in, title company or the other lawyer, you know, prepares the check, sends them out, and then overnights a check to the seller. So that's changed quite a bit too because of COVID. So yeah,
Gotcha.
force majeure has been there. It's always been there, but now there's another reason, another act of God, if you will, this COVID-19.
Yeah, I feel
Right.
like that would have just deleted like every contract out.
Well, I mean, to the extent that you have trouble performing under it, but you know, there's ways to get around the COVID. You know, again, for the real estate, you know, it's not like the deal can't go through. We just need to use FedEx. That's all.
Right.
Right. So the last thing I want to talk about in this kind of topic of law, I'd like to actually talk about a case study to hopefully kind of bring it down to earth for some people that are listening, and to just get your opinion on just kind of what they could have done differently. So basically, the case study is this podcast called the I Am Athlete podcast. It was started by a few ex NFL players, Brandon Marshall being the head of I Am Athlete, and so he started. But he had a couple other ex NFL players on, and they started having. I think they started at the beginning of 2020, and they grew really, really fast over the span of like a year and a half, and millions of views. And just recently, a couple of the guys on the podcast left the podcast and started their own over contract disputes. And when they told the story of what happened, basically they didn't write anything down when they started the podcast. And then when they kind of sat down to be like, okay, well, I think we should write down the compensation for each of us and equity and stuff like that. The other guys on the show wanted equity in the company, and Brandon Marshall, being the owner, wanted to sign them on as employees and give them 1099s. So basically they were just had a dispute over the contract when they actually came down to it, which forced them to split. Basically, I just wanted to ask you, and you might even reiterate a little bit of what you talked about before as far as starting a business, but I just wanted to ask you, as young people, everyone just has ideas and gets with their friends and wants to start something, and sometimes they forget to write stuff down. So I guess just wanted to ask you, what can people learn from this type of situation? And from a lawyer's point of view, how can they avoid making that mistake?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you hit on it. I mean, write it down so that everyone sees it in black and white.
Right.
So there's no misunderstandings. You know, the employees, independent contractors may have had expectations that the owners and Brandon didn't have. So you want to certainly, nail that down, at least to have some, so that both parties come to the table with the same expectations, the same understanding. And I think the only way to do that is to write something down so that everyone sees it in black and white. If there is a contract, you can have restrictive covenants. So now these people, started with I Am Athlete, and now they're going off doing their own thing, competing against I Am Athlete. So, they could have had covenants not to compete that would restrict them from going into this market, stealing these ideas and then going and starting it up on your own. So we see that a lot with employee contracts. Anti-solicitation covenants, so you can't steal the employees and then start your own practice. So certainly, they needed to, I think, get on the same page, put it down in writing early on when, nothing's of value. You don't think down the road, well, what about the intellectual property that we're developing? Who's going to own it? Who's going to be able to license it? Things like that. But those are the things you need to talk about up front before you start dealing with millions and millions of dollars, and then people are entrenched. So it's better to get those issues flushed out at the onset. When it's not worth anything, than waiting until there's millions of dollars at stake.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's really the point I tried to make with bringing this up is just to get to people that have ideas to just always think about, hey, what is this intellectual property that I'm developing at this moment? Even though it may not have a million views and you don't have all the followers, whatever, you are still creating intellectual property that you can then at whatever time in the future license and make money from. So you still want to be able to show that you own it, basically.
Exactly.
Especially
So in
partnerships.
a lot of employment agreements, they'll have work for hire clauses, and that makes clear that whatever the employee develops on the employer's dime becomes the property of the employer, not the employee.
Right.
Yeah.
So my question now is, your relationship with the law, your entire kind of lineage has been on one side as the lawyer. Have you ever considered, or what are your thoughts on being a judge, the other side of the law?
Early on in my career, I thought about, it'd be nice being a judge. But talking to judges, I'm not sure if that's something I would really want to do. One, it's very restrictive. You have to be, in the court, and you only rule on what you're given. There's not a lot of interaction with the parties. So I no longer, aspire, I guess, to be a lawyer. I always thought going to law school, when you're studying constitutional law, how great it would be to be on the Supreme Court. and make and be
Right.
the ultimate justice and make those and make law, not just interpret it and interpret law. But I like the practice of law, the interaction of people. Again, courts, they sit sort of aloof. They deal with what they're presented. Um, I mean, obviously we need judges, but I'm not one of them.
Not for you.
Not for me.
No, I feel that.
I totally feel that. Gotta be more active.
I think
Know what I'm
so. I mean,
saying?
that's the fun part, getting to know people. And that's why I didn't like big law firms dealing with corporations. I like, dealing with small companies where I get to know the principals. They have more at stake than a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. So they're more invested, I think, in the outcomes. They're more cost conscious, of course. But yeah, I mean, and then the trust and estate work is getting to know people, finding out that most families are dysfunctional in some way or another. That's the fun part.
But you started your own practice now. So have you ever thought also about expanding that? Like, you own your own business. Like, have you thought about, you know what I mean, bringing on 5, 10 other lawyers and like scaling what you do?
So I've been in two practices. I moved to Jersey to continue my life history. Moved back to Jersey, opened up my own practice. Then I partnered with another lawyer for a couple of years. It didn't work out well. We had a falling out, so we dissolved that partnership. I then went to and partnered with another lawyer, and that one ended after 5, 6 years amicably. It just didn't make sense financially to stay together. So I've been in practice with other lawyers, but again, grandfather was a solo, father was a solo, so I must have a defective
It's in his
gene.
blood.
Yeah,
It's in his genes. Facts.
He's
He's a
Those
solo,
genes
right?
are
Yo, you talking
developed.
about Star
He's
Wars?
a
New
solo.
Obi-Wan's coming out, right? Like
Facts. He's a
Han
Hans.
Solo,
He's
right?
a Hans.
We need our own sandbox. We don't play well with others. So, but
Hey,
in terms of associates and employees and whatnot, I've kept
mhm.
it small and lean, and it seems to work out.
It seems to have facts. All right, so now I want to get into kind of like some kind of like career life questions. Um, I want to start off with just like, what's a work day in the life of Eliot look like as
Now,
someone who owns his own practice?
the good thing is it's different every day. So that's good for me. Not everybody. Some people would like consistency, which is fine, but for me, variety keeps things lively and whatnot. So some days it's all estate planning or estate administration or estate litigation. Some days it's real estate, reviewing contracts, preparing seller docs, whatever the case, or reviewing loan documents. Some days it's a lot of everything. The days I don't like are the administration days where I got to deal with the books and the paying the bills
All
and
the numbers.
ordering this and that and all that. But that's part of owning a small business is dealing with the back office stuff too. But each day is different, which is what I like.
Yeah, so I'd say that's like definitely, even Jay and I were talking about it a little earlier. That's what we love about what we do. Like every single day, every single week, new opportunities, get to do different things, talk to different people in different industries. It's just makes it interesting, makes life a little fun.
And the day doesn't always progress the way I thought it would. People call,
Right.
people need
Exactly.
this, and that, this arises. So,
Facts.
again, there's no planning. So,
Exactly. Keeps it fun.
yeah.
Keeps it fun.
Yeah.
Another question I have is just you being a lawyer. I just feel like we just kind of have the sense that lawyers deal with a lot of BS because they mostly deal with disputes and such. I guess this is a little bit of a personal question, but have you ever faced a moral dilemma in your line of work? And would you care to offer any example or story?
Moral dilemma. Well, when I was at the one of the firms, we do discovery, and that is during litigation, both sides are required to produce documents and answer questions under oath. So, we were preparing to answer the interrogatories and the document requests, and there was a smoking gun document, and my partner didn't come out and say it, but suggested that maybe we wanted to lose that smoking gun and not produce it. So, of course, I didn't abide by that, and we produced it. And the chips, let the chips fall where they may. But I guess that's a moral dilemma. There's the old lawyer joke. We have time for a quick lawyer joke?
Of course.
All right. So a woman comes into the offices of Jones and Smith and meets with Mr. Jones. He says the consultation fee is $100. So they have the consultation at the end. She hands him a $100 bill. She leaves. After she leaves, Mr. Jones realizes that there was another $100 bill stuck behind the first $100 bill. So the moral dilemma is, do you tell Mr. Smith? Not do you tell the client, but do you tell your partner? It's a bad lawyer joke.
Right.
I appreciate it. Edit that out of the pocket. Try.
Oh man.
Yeah, I feel like
all right.
there's ample opportunity for the moral dilemma, but because
facts.
You literally study the law, there's none in action.
Well, there's always moral dilemmas. Do you follow the law? Do you skirt the law?
Right.
I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess everybody faces that every single day, and in every single line of work. Do I want to even drive to work? Do I want to go 80 today on the highway, or do I want to go 80 in a 40? But yeah, so I guess moving on to just more of like I'd actually like to go back. I know I'd already asked you before about advice that you would offer to other lawyers, but I guess I'd just like to kind of ask again, even just more from other than just like the path to take. Like the advice you said was, if you can get into a big firm, if you have the opportunity to do that, do. But even just as far as like the day-to-day like mindset, like basically what would be your advice on like how to win, and not win as far as meaning somebody else loses, but how do you succeed at the highest level?
I think you succeed by making sure that everybody gets something out of the deal. You bring compromise, everybody to draft a good compromise for a litigation matter. You need to see everyone's perspective. You need to realize where people are coming from and what buttons to push, so to speak, so that you can arrive at a settlement. If it's a sale of a business, you need to sit and see, what is it that they want and how to structure it. So again, it involves talking to both sides and seeing both sides. That's the biggest thing. Lawyers, sometimes have monolithic focus. It's their client and that's all they focus on. But unless you see the big picture, so to speak, I don't think you do your client justice by just blindly plowing through and doing whatever the client says. Sometimes, you need to redirect the client and set expectations more appropriately.
Right. And do you think that those type of just tactics or some things that you just learn from experience, or obviously they are just things you learn from experience, but are there any other ways that, or advice in ways that other people or aspiring lawyers can build that sense of direction and leadership and personable skills?
You know, it all comes down to the golden rule, treat people the way you would want to be treated. I have, talk about, you said, I deal with a lot of BS in my profession, which is true. I mean, I have lawyers who don't respond, don't call back, clients who don't call back. The old, there's three sides to every story: your side, your client's side, their side, and the truth. Can't tell you how many times a day other lawyers tell me, I don't know what I'm doing, you're missing the point, you don't know what the law is. So you have people telling you, trying to get a one-up on you by telling you don't know what you're doing. I think it's just a matter, I didn't have this wisdom, before I had the gray hair. So I think it's life
Right.
lessons learned. And I guess
Right.
there's no other way to learn that but to live it.
Through
Well, there you go.
experience.
Yeah.
Well, there's two ways
Facts.
to learn, because that's through experience, but then we also have books, videos, and everything else. Now is my question right now is, for somebody that's not necessarily a lawyer, I'll even just speak personally for myself. Like, if I own a company and it's to my advantage to understand what's going on, know the basics, like, where do I learn about law? And I want to follow that up with, like, I actually called the IRS because there was, like, I forget, I mean, there was something going on. And when I called the IRS, and I'm like, okay, so when I go online, I see like a personal IRS, but where's irs.gov? Where's the website for it? And they're like, I'm on hold for an hour to try to talk to somebody, and they tell me, yo, there's no business IRS website. Why? And they tell me, because if we publish the rules, then people will take advantage. Okay. So
Okay. I mean,
again, where do I learn the law? Where do I learn the law?
there are many good law schools you can go to, but short of that, you can Google regulations, IRS Treasury regulations. I don't know how helpful it would be to read through them, because again, what you're looking for is the practicality of it, not what the
Right.
law says, but how to apply the law, what it means, what I need to file. And the IRS, when you said you called them, I was thinking, I got to see if he gets through, because Jay, I've
No,
called
I
the
was on
IRS.
hold for it. I was on hold
Yeah,
for a while.
and usually maybe you're a better man than I, but after 20, 30 minutes, I'm checking out. I'm not staying on. So, the IRS has, they have publications that lay out, for businesses what you need to do. So if you Google IRS publications, you can find um, uh, papers that the IRS puts out, letting people know, what the process is to start a business or file forms, or do whatever. So they do it, but it's a matter of finding it, and it's a matter of understanding it. So again, better,
That's
I
what I'm
think,
saying. Like,
hire an
where
accountant.
is there a place other than like law school to learn about the law? Like, or this podcast or law school to learn about the law. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, again, the internet is a powerful entity. There's a lot of good stuff in there. So again, when you say the law, that's an amalgamous form. So if you want to know about real estate closings, you can Google real estate closings and find a lot of lawyers, blogs and whatnot on real estate closings. Or if you want, what is a will? What are the important things in a will? you can go to my website and look at my blog, and it'll explain, what an executor does, what a trustee does, things like that. So yeah, I mean, if you don't want to hire a lawyer and you don't want to go to law school, I guess you got to be a little adventurous and hop on the web and see. But again, I caution people, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
Thanks. You got to Han Solo it a little bit. All right. Well, this has been amazing. We're kind of getting down into the last kind of couple questions, just personal questions. I wanted to ask you if you had a billboard in Times Square for 1 week, what would it say?
Well, given what's going on now, it would simply say, their bodies, their choice. I have 3 daughters, so I hope they never need an abortion, but I think it's their choice. They should be able to get one. So their bodies, their choice. For everything, if I have a caveat, underneath it would say, for everything else, call Eliot Goldstein and my number.
That's amazing. That should be a billboard. All right. I like that. The next one is what information would you add to youth curriculum, like elementary, preschool, based on what you do, just like law? Just what do you think children should understand young that we don't teach them just about how law and everything works?
Oh, not so much law, but finance. I mean, there should be financial education. I have 3 daughters, and they graduated from high school. Not one of them could fill out a check. Basic stuff like that. Get about balance sheets and assets, liabilities, profit and loss statements, basic stuff. They really know. And if you're going to go into business, you got to have the basics. Balancing. Well, these days, no one balances a checkbook. The computer does it for you. But, I think there should be more financial education. The legal side, I think as you get older, you just sort of pick
start learning the law.
From a lay person's perspective, what the law is. You see the sign says 55 miles per hour. That's the speed limit. Whether you follow that or not, different story. But but I would say financial education is definitely lacking in our curriculum.
Yeah, we highly agree on that one. The next one is, are there any pieces of art that you would recommend that have impacted you positively throughout your life, whether it's a book, movie, philosophy, teacher, just any type of art
that have motivated me?
Yeah, just like impacted you in like like something that you're like, oh wow, this kind of changed my perspective. You can call it a paradigm shifter.
Well, I don't know. Well, in college, I read a lot of existentialism, Kierkegaard and Camus and Sartre, and that certainly depressed me a lot. But I've sort of moved on from that and things in perspective. So yeah, I don't know that there's any one book that's inspired me or motivated me.
Any favorite movies?
Caddyshack, if it's on, I gotta watch it. Godfather, if it's on, I gotta watch it. A little sappy, but It's a Wonderful Life. Every holiday season I watch.
Of course.
Rudy, I gotta watch Rudy.
Classic.
So yeah, those are the
good classics.
Yeah, all
good
classics.
Classics.
Not a day goes by where you can't quote a line from either Stripes or Caddyshack or any one of Bill Murray's movies.
Facts.
Exactly.
Well, cool.
So,
Are we
my-
basically coming down? Yeah, Jay,
is the
you can
last
do
thing.
it. Go ahead.
This is the last thing. Is I want to ask, what does different mean to you?
What does different mean to me? I guess not the same. If it's different, it's not the same. I'm not sure in terms of what. That's all you're giving me is what is different. The word
Just
different.
right. Yeah.
Outside the norm, I guess, is the way I would describe it.
We just like to. That's just something we
company.
like to ask everybody.
So we
I
ask
was
right.
doing
everybody.
so
yeah.
well, and you threw me that fastball right down the middle. Swung and missed. All right. What are some of the answers people give to that question?
Some people take it like personal. Some people take it philosophical. Some people
Some
do
people
it
are
just
like
simple.
literal. They're like, well, it's like
Right.
differentiated from everyone else. Some people make it like really kind of conscious, and they're like, well, people that are different are the people that, you know what I mean, blah blah blah, change the world, inspire, or express themselves, or, you know what I mean. But the whole point of the question, though, is to get different perspectives on different.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we ask everyone that at the end of the podcast. And yeah, what does different mean to you?
Gotcha.
To me,
I like that.
I have never shared on the podcast what different means to me. Watch the next episode to find out. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, last just to wrap up, again, much appreciate you coming on. Phenomenal guest, very well spoken.
Thank you for having me.
Where can people find you? Shout out websites or phone numbers or whatever.
Yeah, www.egoldsteinlawfirm.com is the website. We're in Somerville, catty corner to the courthouse, 92 East Main Street in Somerville.
Well, yeah, thank you again, man.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure meeting you today and talking to you. And I'm sure this won't be the last time we speak. But thank you for being on the podcast.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.